Hey friends, welcome back to another adult faith formation video. For those of you who are new here, my name is Becca and we're glad you're here. And for those of you who are coming back, it is good to be with you again. So this is a series where Pastor Micah or myself take one of the readings from the coming week and we dwell in it. So sometimes that is the Old Testament text, sometimes that is the letter or the epistle, and sometimes it is the psalm. And today I am coming to you with a reflection on Psalm 112. So it's the whole psalm. So I'm going to read the whole thing to you. Again, that's Psalm 112. Hallelujah. Happy are they who fear the Lord and have great delight in God's commandments. Their descendants will be mighty in the land, and the generation of the upright will be blessed. Wealth and riches will be in their house, and their righteousness will last forever. Light shines in the darkness for the upright. The righteous are merciful and full of compassion. It is good for them to be generous in lending, and to manage their affairs with justice, for they will never be shaken. The righteous will be kept in everlasting remembrance. They will not be afraid of any evil rumors. Their heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. Their heart is established and will not shrink until they see their desire upon their enemies. They have given freely to the poor, and their righteousness stands fast forever. They will hold up their head with honor. The wicked will see it and be angry. They will gnash their teeth and pine away, and the desires of the wicked will perish. So this text has a lot in it. I mean, they cram a lot into this psalm. And I want to start by saying this is a poem, and they kept calling it an acrostic poem in what I was reading. And the only reason I share that with you is I always encourage our young people to write acrostic poetry for creative endeavors around here, and they do not seem into it. So I will be sharing this with them too. But the thing that stuck out to me most in this text is how many times the word righteous and righteousness were used. So 4 times is the answer, which feels like a lot of times. And the word is used to describe people and their behavior, and also an expectation. Righteousness means morally right or justifiable. And honestly, as I was preparing for this, I needed more. I think I needed synonyms to that word. So in case you need those too, some synonyms would be upright, upstanding, worthy, ethical, or good. In this psalm, the word righteousness is defined by faith in God and how we live that out. So it's important while we note that those who are faithful to God's commandments and fear the Lord are righteous. But I want to talk about God's commandments. When we think about the 10 commandments, it's important to remember that the first 3 are about our relationship with God, and the last 7 are about our relationship with each other. So being faithful to God and faithful to God's commandments means that we're also being faithful to our neighbor. The psalmist goes on to talk about virtues and how they are praised. And these virtues were taught by these teachers, these wisdomous teachers. And so those virtues are fidelity to God's Torah, industriousness, generosity in spirit, just dealings, steadfastness when hardships come, and care for the poor. And I want to talk about how those are things that when we live in community, those virtues are parts of the 10 commandments. It is a steadfastness in hardships and how that affects our relationship with God, but also caring for the poor is caring for our neighbor. And so living within those structures of the 10 commandments is to be faithful to God and to be faithful to our neighbor. And so this righteousness that we're talking about, this being made right with and how that goes about, we as Christians believe that Jesus made the world right. And that we learn in the New Testament. But this is from the Old Testament, meaning Jesus doesn't exist here yet. the prophecy of Jesus to come lives here, and we believe that Jesus is that, but our brothers and sisters, our siblings of the Jewish faith, do not believe that. So the way in which they live is faithful to God's commandments and faithful to Jewish law and all of those very rich things. But the thing that ties us together here is that our belief and our faithfulness to the 10 Commandments, the being faithful to God and loving our neighbor. So this righteous lifestyle, this lifestyle that is, you know, keeping the Sabbath holy and loving our neighbor and not coveting their belongings and not gossiping about them and not taking the Lord's name in vain, those virtues lead to a righteous life. This path to a righteous life is what a lot of people, are theologians who have studied this text, have said. And so the beginning of this psalm starts with, happy are those, happiness. This lifestyle that the psalmist is referring to is one of righteousness. It's one of happiness. And so they are equating righteousness and happiness together. So righteousness, I've talked about a lot. I've probably said it more than 4 times, unlike the psalmist. What does that mean to us now? Back then, they thought about, you know, not coveting their neighbor's ox or their slaves. How do we bring righteousness into our context? How do we bring it into 2023? How do we define what is moral and worthy? And do we use God's love as our definition? Do we use Jesus's life as an example? And are we living into those things? I think righteousness now does not look like coveting our neighbor's ox, but I do think it means not bearing false witness and gossiping about our neighbors. I think it is a faithfulness by living out God's love for our neighbor. And so I think the question I want to leave with you, and the thing that hopefully will stick with you, is the last questions I've asked. And maybe those will stick with you. Maybe you already have answers for them. And if you do, I'd love to hear them. Is, what does righteousness mean to you right now? How do you define what is moral and worthy? Do you use God's love as your definition? And do you use Jesus's life as an example? Friends, righteousness is a big conversation, and we can look at it through so many different definitions and faith systems and all of those beliefs. But to hear that we are called to a life that is to abide by the 10 Commandments and God's love for all creation is a life that we are free to live into. And it is a practice that we consistently get to do over and over and over again, because ultimately when we mess up, we'll try again. And so I invite you into this righteous conversation, into this conversation that hopefully will draw us closer together and closer to God. So that is my conversation, or that is my nugget for you today. If you have any thoughts or ideas, we'd love to hear them. You can leave them on the Facebook or on YouTube or in the email, or however you are getting this video. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So thanks for joining me. Till next time. See ya.